to have to watch on a video. It's pretty simple. In fact, some of this might actually be review. So slope-intercept form. So again, we're on linear functions. Everything that we're going to do today is with a line. So this tells you right here we have a linear equation, and we want to write this in slope-intercept form. Now, it is super important that you know the names of these different equations, because we're going to learn a lot of them. So slope-intercept, so slope, remember, is the steepness of the line, and intercept is where we cross the y-axis. So we know two things right away. We're going to know the steepness of the line, and we're going to know where we cross the y-axis. So our formula here is y equals mx plus b. So most important formula you learn in Algebra 1, mx plus b. So m, we talked about this the other day, that's our slope. And the b value is our y-intercept. And y-intercept, again, is this, where it crosses the x-axis. So if I was to sketch this and do like a little drawing of what this looks like, it doesn't matter what my line looks like. So let me just do a negative slope line. So I have this line, and I have this point right here. So this point right here where I cross my y-axis, this is my b value. That's my intercept. And then my slope is going to be my rise over run. Or in this case, I'm going to fall over right. So here I would have a slope, and here I would have a slope. So we found the slope algebraically and from a graph last week. So this value right here that I'm going to do, so remember m is rise over run, or we can say that this is rise over right, because we're always going to go right, okay? And so this is something we're going to have to calculate. So this first little section is super easy. It just says, given the slope and the intercept, write the equation. So here's my slope. So this is my m value. Here's my intercept. This is my b value. All right? So I have y equals, now if my formula is y equals mx plus b, I end up with 2x, this is my m, plus b, but my b value here is a negative. So instead of saying plus negative 1, I'm just going to say negative 1. So plus b, in this case, it's minus b, because it's negative. Okay? Doesn't matter if I have a fraction. So if I have a fraction, I'm going to have y equals negative 3 over 5x plus 4. Now this is truly a plus b because this value here is positive. Okay? So I can look at any one of these. This is pretty simple actually. So if I have a negative value, so if I have a negative 1, I'm not going to write my m value as negative 1. I'm just going to say negative x. So y equals negative x plus 7. Now, technically this is what I have, negative 1x. But we know that this 1 is implied, so we never write the 1. We would write it like I have here in black. So the negative x plus 7. This is super common. So what this is saying is we have a slope that's negative 1. So if we look at this, this really means my m value is negative 1 over 1. So this means I'm going to go down and then to the right. So rise over run. So rise in this case is a fall, and then I'm going to go to the right. Okay? So pretty simple. You're just basically plugging it in. You have the m value, you have the b value. Okay, so now let's go down here and look at it from a graph. So we're going to do the same thing that we have here, except for we're going to have to do a little bit of calculating. So first thing I want to do is I want to look at my slope. So m, I'm going to look at rise over right. And again, we're going to do the leftmost point. So I have 2 points here. This is my leftmost point. So if I count this, I go up 1, 2, 3, and I go over 1. So if I go up 3 and over 1, this is the same as saying that my slope is just 3. I'm not going to list this as 3 over 1. Okay? Now b is where I cross the y-axis. So here it's at 1, 2, 3, 4. So my b value is negative 4. So my equation, I have everything that I had up above. My equation is 3x minus 4. Okay? Now, if I look at this graph number 8, the first thing that pops in my head is that the graph is going down. Remember, I read this from left to right. The graph is going down, so I know right away I have to have a negative slope. So my leftmost point is right here on the y-axis. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I go down 6, and then I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4. Now remember, the slope has to be in the most reduced form, so I have the simplified fraction of negative 3 over 2. And then my b value is going to be this same point, just by chance. It's my y-axis point, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my b value is 7. Now remember, these values for b are always going to be y-axis values, so they're always y. So my equation is negative 3 over 2x plus 7. Okay? All right. Go ahead and pause the video, and I'm going to have you do, let me look at this real quick. Let's do just the even problems on the back, and then I'll pull this back up and you can check your answers. Okay, y'all. So as I go through this, I couldn't remember if I told you even or odd. So hopefully I said even, because that's what I did. So with this first one, it's x minus 6. Now, what I have is up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And if you look all the way here, remember, this has to be my most reduced form. So that most reduced form is going to be a 1, which makes that just x. If I look at number 12, my y-intercept is my origin. So that happens at 0. I don't put plus 0 on the end. If you put plus 0 on the end, it's not wrong, but this is better. So we just don't even want to list that plus 0. This tells us when we have something that's in this format, y equals mx plus b. If there's no b, we know it goes through the origin. And this is going to have a specific type of function that we'll deal with after Christmas break, and that's going to tell us that this is a direct function because we go through that 0, 0 origin. Okay. The next ones were pretty self-explanatory. So I have a negative slope plus 1, and then a negative slope plus 8. Okay. All right, so I want to go over something a little different because there aren't any examples on here. So use this side margin over here to follow along on this, because you're going to see this, so it's important to look at it. So let's just say I've got this coordinate plane and I have a horizontal line. So I have a line that looks like this. So I have this line right here. And so what we know is that when I have a horizontal line, right, this means that my slope value is 0. So my slope value is 0. So that's just one of those things that you have to memorize. Remember what we had. Let me go up here. So I have a positive slope. I have a negative slope. I have a horizontal slope, which means my slope is 0. And I have a vertical line, and this tells me that it's undefined. Okay, so those are the 4 types of slope that we have. I've got those listed in the room. And so if I have this horizontal line, then it looks like this, right? So my m value on this line right here is 0, and my b value that I have driven is 3. So this is because this point right there is going to be my y-intercept. Okay, so I still have an equation of a line even though my slope is 0. So what I have here is y equals 0x plus 3. We don't list this 0x because it doesn't really exist. So I have a line that says y equals 3. Now, if you think about it, this makes a whole lot of sense, right? So if I have this line that we want to draw, so I have this pink line right here, this is saying draw a line when y equals 3. Well, that's what I have. When y equals 3, I have this line that goes through this point. So this is an equation of a horizontal line. Okay. All right, so let's look at the opposite of that. So if I have something that looks like this, and let me go here, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to draw this time, I'm going to have this vertical line. So now what happens is I know that my slope value is undefined, and I know that my b value is 0. So when I have this, let me redraw this here. When I have this pink line right here, I have no, I don't want to say 0, that's wrong, sorry. I have none. I don't ever cross my y-axis, right? If my v value is 0, I would go through the origin, but it doesn't go through the origin, so I misspoke on that. So my b value here is none. I don't have one. So if I want to write this line, y equals mx plus b, what I have here is that this doesn't exist, right? And this doesn't exist. So I have no slope, and I have no y-intercept. But I still have a line. I still have this pink line. So in this case, what I have is just x equals 3. So you'll notice that everything that we've done before is y equals mx plus b. My equation up here is y equals, but this is still an equation of a line, so this is an equation of a vertical line. Okay? So x equals 3 is still a line. It's right here. It's just that it's not going to go through those points. Okay? So slope-intercept, so this format, y equals mx plus b, is the most popular form, and we're going to do a lot of converting back and forth in this form. But what we're going to do is learn another form right now, and that's standard form. So that's the next page of your notes. So standard form, so it says linear equations are also frequently written in standard form. And standard form is in the form ax plus by equals c. Now, if you remember, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say y equals mx plus b. So when we have y equals mx plus b, we have a y and we have an x. This is the same y and this is the same x. But you notice I don't have an m anymore. I don't have a slope. I have an a value, but it's not a slope. And I don't have a y-intercept. This is a little b. This is a big B. So upper case matters. Let me say this again. Y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form, I have a little b. It's always a little b. Standard form are all uppercase letters. Uppercase A, uppercase B, uppercase C, and it's not the same B. So B does not equal big B. Super important. Okay, so this is not tricky, but it just requires you to do a little manipulating of the formulas. So it says here, the equations are written in standard form. So ax, here's what I have. Ax plus by equals c. So this is in standard form, all right? So it's written in standard form, and we want to convert to slope-intercept form, solving for y. So if you remember last chapter, we had literal equations, and we had equations that looked funky like this, and we said solve for x, or solve for y, or solve for v, or solve for whatever variable we had. That's what we're doing right now. So if I'm going to solve these from standard form to slope-intercept form, I want it to be y equals. That's my goal. So I'm going to move everything else. So in my equation, I have 2x plus y equals 3. Well, I want to move this 2x over because I need this to be on the other side. So y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to move this over to the other side, which means I'm going to subtract 2x. So I have y equals negative 2x plus 3. Remember, we want the mx to be first. Now in this case, there's nothing attached to my y. So there's nothing attached to my y. I'm actually done. So what I have here, it says identify the slope and the intercept. So here, my slope value is negative 2, and my intercept value is 3. So y equals mx plus b. Now, a minute ago, I told you that the a value does not correspond to the slope, and this c value doesn't, or b value doesn't correspond to the intercept, okay? The fact that this negative 2 shows up as the slope when that is the a value, you see I went from 2 to negative 2. Y'all, that is not normal. That is not normal. So just because this went over, don't assume that you just make this the opposite sign and you're going to get the slope, okay? And I'll show you what I mean. We're going to we'll work number 2 here so that you can see what that looks like. All right, so I have ax plus by equals c. All right, so I want this to be y equals mx plus b. This is what I'm looking for. So first thing I'm going to do is move this 4x to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 4x. So I end up with 5y equals negative 4x minus 30. So I move the 4x over, it becomes negative. I have this negative 30. But this is 5y. I need just y. So this means that I'm going to divide every one of these terms by 5. Now, I could have written it like this. That's fine, as long as you know that this goes to both terms. So these are going to cancel out and I end up with just y. Now I have a negative 4 over 5. This negative 4 over 5 does not simplify, so it's going to stay negative 4 over 5x. So you see what I did? I took this and I made this a fraction. Now the x is still technically in the numerator. I can leave it just like this, but it's important to see that now I've created my slope. My slope is negative 4 over 5. And then when I simplify this, I end up with negative 6. So my values of importance, m is negative 4 over 5, and my b value here is negative 6. It's negative because the sign in front of my b value is negative. Okay? All right, let's do another one. Let's do number 3. So again, I have ax plus by equals c. And I know that this is negative 3, so when I have ax plus by equals c, I know that this is a negative 3, and I say plus by, but really what I'm saying is that you keep the sign and whatever's in front of your b term with that. So my b term here is negative 3, my uppercase b. All right? So again, I move the x to the other side, so I have negative 3y equals negative x plus 12. And y'all, order matters on this, so you can't say 12 minus x. Okay? So now I'm going to divide everything by negative 3. So I divide this by negative 3, this by negative 3, and this by negative 3. So this gives me y equals, I have a negative divided by a negative, so I know that this is positive, and my numerator is 1. So I'm going to write this as 1/3 x. So let's talk about this again. So I have negative over negative. So negative divided by a negative is a positive number. So I end up with this being positive. My numerator is a 1. It's not a 0. It's a 1. I have this implied 1. So I get the slope of 1/3. And then 12 divided by negative 3 is minus 4. So here my slope value is 1/3. And my b value is negative 4. Now let's talk about this for just a second. So what this looks like, if I was going to graph this, is I would go down here and I would have my intercept at negative 4. And this tells me that I have rise over right. So I'm going to go up 1 over 3. That would be my next point, right? And then I would do it again, up 1 over 3. So the slope of this line, when I graph this line, it's going to look like this. Now this is why it's super important to be very logical when you do this. You need to be orderly. Because if you would have missed this negative over a negative, and this would have ended up being a negative sloped line, my line would be going the opposite way. My line would be going this way, and that would be wrong. It's the same thing here, 12 divided by a negative 3. If this intercept is not negative 4, if you didn't catch that and you had a positive 4, you would have a value that would be up here, and that would be wrong. Okay? Let's do one more. I'm going to do number 5. Okay, so with number 5, I have ax by equals c. It doesn't matter that my c is a 0. If I have an equation, I have to have something over here. If there's nothing there, it has to be a 0. So I move my 4x over, and I end up with negative y equals negative 4x. I'm going to completely drop the 0 because I don't have to have anything on this side of the equal sign anymore because the 0 just goes away. It was a placeholder for this equation. I can't have an equation that looks like this. I have to have something here. Okay, so now I divide this all through by negative 1 because what I have here is I have this implied negative 1y. So when I divide it all through, I end up with y equals 4x. And that's my equation of my line. So if you remember, what this means is that we're going to have a line. I'm going to just graph this real quick. Okay, so we're going to have this line where my slope value is 4 and my b value is 0. It is 0 because there's nothing here, and so if there's nothing there, that means it goes through the origin. So I have this point right here. Now, because my slope is 4, this is right, but technically what I have here is 4 over 1. So this is my rise, and this is my right. So I'm going to go up 4 and over 1. And then I would go up 4, let me just do this, and over 1. When you do this, you're going to have graph paper, so it's going to be super nice. But I'm just kind of giving you a preview of what's to come. This is why we have our rulers and we have all this stuff, right? So that's what this looks like. Okay, let's go ahead and pause this, and you do 6, 6, and 8. Okay, here's what I came up with. So we move this over, I end up with 3/2 x plus 7. So my slope, my intercept down here. When I move the x over, I have a negative x. So my slope actually becomes negative 1/5. So this negative that's right here is super important. So I have negative 1/5. Okay, go ahead and flip it over. We don't need to worry about the ones on the top because it's just more practice. You're going to get practice when you're doing your homework. All right, so let's go down here. So these are much harder. So what we have here is we've got these graphs and we have these equations. And it says determine the equation that best represents the line shown on the graph. So it says right here, convert them to slope-intercept form. So there's a lot of things that we can do on this. And the first thing that I recommend you do is you find, so step 1, I would find the slope on the graph. And then I would find the intercept on the graph. And once you have your slope and you have your intercept, we can kind of look at these and narrow some things out. All right? So what happens here is I'm going to pick this point because this is my intercept. So I have this point, b equals -2. And just by chance, this goes through the x and the y. So if I look at creating my rise over run, so m is going to be my rise over right. And I know that this is a positive line. If I go from left to right, it's going up, so it's a positive line. So if I go up here, the next place I cross is here, and then I cross here. Remember, I'm looking for wherever my x and y lines intersect. So this is going to go up 1 over 3. So I have up 1 over 3. So I'm going to have a positive slope value. So if I look at this, when I move the x over, I'm going to have a negative x, and I'm going to have a negative x, and then I'm going to have a negative 3x and a negative 3x. So I know that when I divide by these numbers, I have to divide by a number that's going to be negative because I want a positive slope. So when I divide by this 3, I'm going to have a negative or a positive. So I can't have A as an answer. I can't have C as an answer. So it has to be either B or D. And here's why. Because when I divide, I'm going to divide this. So I would have negative x divided by negative 3, which is going to give me 1/3. With this one, I'm going to have negative 3 divided by negative 1, which is going to give me a positive 3. So if I look at this, my slope is 1/3. B is the only one that gives me a value of 1/3. Now, you could go in and you could convert every one of these into slope-intercept form. When you look on the answer key, that's what I did, just so that you can look at them. But you can use some logic so that you don't have to do all that extra work, right? I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to get you to do the last one on your own. Okay, so first thing I want to do, I want to look at my b-intercept. My b-intercept happens right here. That's -1. Okay, now I'm going to look at my slope. My slope is also a positive line. So it looks like I cross here, and I cross here, and I cross here. So what I do is I go up 2 over 1. So up 2 over 1. So this means my slope is going to be a positive 2 value. Okay, so if I move these over, I would have negative x, and then negative x, and then negative 2x, and then negative 2x. So all I'm doing is I'm taking this value of x. If I move it to the other side of the equation, it becomes negative x. This becomes negative x. This one, when I move it over, becomes negative 2x. And then this one, when I move it over, it also becomes negative 2x. Okay? So if my slope value is positive, That means when I divide by my b value, I need to divide by a negative number. If I divide by a positive number, like this one, I would have negative 1 divided by a positive 2, which would give me a negative 1/2. But I know my slope is 2, so I can get rid of this one. Here, I have a negative 1, and I divide by a negative 2. So this gives me a slope of just 1/2, but my slope is 2. If I go here, I have a negative 2. I'm dividing by just 1, which gives me a negative 2. So not this one, not this one. Let's look at this last one. It better work. So I have negative 2. I divide by my y value, which is negative 1, and I have a positive 2. So I'm going to say that this is it, right? And then I can look at this. I have this 1 value. If I divide by negative 1, 1 divided by negative 1, I get negative 1, which is my b value. Okay? All right, you pause the video and work 15. This is the last one, and then you're going to get some time to work on your work. Okay, so the answer is C, but I want to talk about this for a second. So when I move my x value over, I know my slope is negative 5 over 4. So I went down 5, so that's where the negative comes from, and then to the right by 4. So this is negative 5 over 4. Well, when I move this over, this is going to tell me that my numerator is negative 4, so it can't be this one. And this is a numerator of 4, so it can't be this one. So I can cross those two off immediately. And then when I have these last two, I've moved the 5 over, so I divide by 4, I get negative 5/4. With this one, I'm dividing by negative 4, which gives me a positive 5 over 4. Okay? So that's why this value of C. If this was overwhelming to you and you're like, I have no idea what she just did, then you can convert all these. It's just going to take more time. Okay? Or come see me and we'll work through some more of these. Okay? Now, with whatever time's left, we're going to just go ahead and work on homework. Thank you.